Hello and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. This week we're talking to Dr. Greg Wells, and it's about his new book called Powerhouse, Protect Your Energy, Optimize Your Health, and Supercharge Your Performance. Greg is a returning guest. I hope you enjoyed his last episode that he was on, and this episode is just as fun. So listen and have a great time like we did. As always, some laughs and some great insight. Enjoy and have a magical week. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. I hope you are excited that you have seen in the podcast title that we've got a returning guest, and we'll get to them shortly. Very exciting. I think actually our first returning guest ever. So this is a really exciting event. And so we'll get to you shortly, returning guest, but let's jump around the room and see how everyone's going. So John, how are you going this week?
This week's been a frustrating week just with work, Jez. Just dealing with people and dealing with new systems and having to learn those, and they don't work the way my brain works. So having to really look at that. And I'm sure we're making it easier for ourselves. I'm just not sure we're making it easier for me. So interesting week.
That's always tough. The new system's always a tricky one. Well, good work, John. Keep powering through. You've got it. Danette, how are you going this week?
Yeah, I've had a great week. I've been down dog sitting for my parents.
Only one left.
The Australian Veterans Golf Championship. So Dad came fifth, I think, and Mum came sixth, which is pretty. So they're both over 80, Dr. Greg. I've just spoilt the guest alert, and playing in the Veterans Golf. So, yeah. Pretty awesome. My dad's 80, will be 86 next week. So Mum just turned 80. So pretty awesome. So I've been dog sitting and having a lovely time. Plus eating figs that poor old John missed out on. So we've got heaps of fruit growing in our orchard at the moment, and it's all organic. And I sent some up to John in Canberra, and his wife apparently ate all the figs before he could get any.
Yeah, doesn't want to share.
Thanks, Jez.
Yeah, that's all right. That's so much stuff in there. And good luck to Grahame and Pa on their next golfing adventure. We'll see them on the PGA tour soon, I'm sure. And Grahame, how are you going this week?
I'm good, Jez. Thanks. Yeah, I've had most of the week at home, so that's been really good. Plenty of work on. We had a bit of rain this week, which has been fantastic because the last couple of months have been fairly dry, but it's it's greening up outside. It looks amazing. We've got hares running around in the paddock. The occasional fox comes through. Lots of birds. Haven't seen a snake all week, so I'm really excited about
that. That's great news. And now I'm really excited for the moment that in the background of your video, a little snake's little head pops up like that. Just wouldn't be a week at Sunnyside without it. No, but that is really cool. It's nice that you're getting some rain up there, and as it's getting colder, hopefully that means the end of the legless lizard season.
I'm now focusing intensely on both shoulders in the video thing. Thanks very much for that, Jess. I'm just going to go and breathe for a while.
I think that's smart.
Have a chat to Dr. Returning Guest.
And Jess, how was your week? Because you've had special stuff going on.
Yeah, my week, even though this will come out after you can buy tickets, I'm working on, for people in Australia, Osher's is doing a comedy show. You can actually probably grab tickets to the Sydney Comedy Fest, but I'm doing some of the joke writing. It's a news show, so each day we're writing new jokes. It's pretty fun. There's improvisers as part of it, and so it's kind of, if you want to see a bit of stand-up and a bit of improvising, then this is a good kind of all-in-one show that you can go out and check out. So I've been writing some jokes for that, which has been fun. Yeah. Thanks.
This is worth pointing out that all of the jokes that Osher shares that don't land are his.
Yeah, they're the ones that aren't mine. I I can only do so much. And our guest, Dr. Greg, how are you going this week?
Hey. So good. Hey, nice to see you guys. I've missed you all so much. It's my Oz family, and so happy to be back. And things are good. Kids are healthy and happy. Book launch next week. Happy to be back on the road, speaking a lot, training really well. So no, life is good, and it's amazing to reconnect with all of you. Even if it's over a Zoom call, I'm super happy and thrilled to be back with all of you again.
Likewise.
Yes, ditto.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're so excited. As I said, you're our first returning guest, and I feel like this is a perfect time to do it because you got a new book that we want to talk about. You've sent us it. We've gone through it. We've got some questions for you. And we think we've got a great chat in store today. So the book itself, which you, as you said, is coming out next week, though when people hear this, it'll be out. So go get it. There'll be a link in the podcast. Go click on it. If you want to find out more, listen to this podcast. You'll hear a lot about it. But the book is called Powerhouse: Protect Your Energy, Optimize Your Health, and Supercharge Your Performance. Who doesn't want that? So Dr. Greg, before we get into the conversation, how did you come about sort of like deciding what to do a book on, and specifically this book?
So about 2 years ago, sitting around talking to people, kind of maybe coming out of the pandemic, not really. Everyone's burned out, everyone's tired, everyone's fatigued, everyone's frustrated. I was like, all right, okay, so everyone's burned out. Got it. Fair enough. It's been rough. So now what? Well, the answer is we need more energy, because if you're burned out, if you're tired, if you're fatigued, you're exhausted, we need energy to counter that. Okay. How do humans create energy? Well, we break down the foods that we eat in little structures called mitochondria, which generate ATP. You use that for muscle contraction, thinking, digestion, everything. So, okay, so it all comes down to the mitochondria. How do we improve our mitochondria? Turns out there's loads of things that you can do to make them, to grow new mitochondria, to strengthen them, and then to protect them. So I ended up digging into it, writing a book about it. And it kind of was actually really easy. Like the other books were really hard to write. This one just kind of flowed, and I'm actually excited about it. Like normally I don't like my books until a couple years later. And this one I'm like, no, I think this one's good. I think this is really going to help people. So I'm really excited to bring it into the world next week. And obviously it's already out because we're going to record this now and play it later, but it's out. So I'm super happy that you can maybe get your hands on it if you think this is interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a great read, so fascinating. I loved it, and it's one of these books that, as you're going through, I'm seeing all these different references that you're using. So it's like, there's so much research in it, which is not uncommon for any of your works. But it was just amazing. I would learn so much. So, thanks for even sending it over. I had a blast reading it.
Yeah, I love sharing it, and you guys are my family, and I trust your opinion. So like, you're welcome to like to challenge me on some of the stuff that I've said, and I won't take it personally. But we'll dig in and see where we land.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think a perfect place to start is with Danette. Danette, you've actually got a couple questions, so maybe start with your first ones, and then we'll jump into the second ones, and tell us about why you chose them as well.
So can I firstly say, loved the book, loved all the really practical things that you could do. And I loved the fact that you can breathe for joy. That was just an awesome thing. And I also like where you brought in the bits about some of the podcasts and shared some of your podcasts and shared some of the insights you got from that. But my first question is really, people hear the word mitochondria, and they're probably going, what is mitochondria? So let's start with that question.
Yeah, or it brings them back to, grade 10 high school biology, and they panic and throw the book away. So don't freak out, everyone. It's not science class. We actually have ideas for you that can make a difference. But so about like 4 billion years ago, in the ocean, there were vents on the bottom of the ocean that were pumping out hot water. And the difference in temperature that existed on the bottom of the ocean 4 billion years ago, the temperature gradients created differences in chemistry. Different chemicals existed, and then different electrical charges began to develop, and then structures began to form. And those actually turned into, 2 billion years later, membranes. Those membranes then were circular. They created little single cellular organisms that began to proliferate around the world, and 2 different types emerged. One of them was an aerobic enzyme, which uses oxygen, and the other one was an anaerobic, not enzyme, but organism, excuse me, and it used sugar for energy. So you had this oxygen burning organism, and you had a sugar burning organism, and the sugar one ate one of the oxygen burning ones. And instead of destroying it and eating it and digesting it, they began to work together. And this gave the new cell a massive evolutionary advantage. And as a result, life proliferated around the world. And that turned into plants, animals, reptiles. All life on Earth now have both the aerobic and anaerobic energy components inside of them. Almost all of them, almost like 99.999% of life on Earth follows this. And the oxygen structures inside are now known as mitochondria. These are the energy factories of the cell. They break down sugars, fats, proteins to create energy that we use to move, to think, to digest. So all life on Earth depends upon these little structures. And the other really interesting thing as I began to dig into it is not only does life depend upon these structures, but death does as well. Mitochondria regulate our cellular life or death. If they don't work well, the cell dies. Cardiovascular disease damages our mitochondria. We have dysfunctional mitochondria in cancer. Neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. Even depression is associated with mitochondrial dysfunction. They're involved in almost every chronic disease. And also, they're hyper-adaptable. They get better if we exercise. And we know that they power all movement, all sport. So they really are responsible for life, health, and our ability to perform. So the more I dig into it, the more I realize like this is the fundamental common pathway we all need to be thinking about so much.
Nice. So I think you've answered my next one about why they're important. But I'd love, my third question was, what are some tips for us to create a great, healthy life where we thrive?
Yeah, it's really important for us to do this now. We've had this collective trauma around the world. We've been through a lot. It's been hard. And it is now time for us to thrive. We have to get back to joy, to get out of languishing and back to flourishing, right? Sorry, this is my 6th podcast day. My voice is going, but I'll do my best to get through it. So what do we need to do? I think that when we practice breath work, for example, we can increase the amount of oxygen that we absorb, setting the stage for our mitochondria to work really, really well. Because mitochondria use oxygen. When we breathe better, we have more oxygen that then fuels our mitochondria to go create more energy for us. We also know that getting back into exercise. Some people really did great during the pandemic, exercised a ton, but a lot of us didn't. And that's totally fine. We are where we are. Massive love and respect for we've survived a global pandemic. Here we are. Now what do? We can move a little bit more. General habitual physical activity. I don't really think we need to go to the gym and sweat. We just need to go for walks. That makes a huge difference. That will spike the growth of new mitochondria for us. And then when we leverage the power of hormesis, which is that a little bit of stress is good for us, but a lot is not. So a little bit of stress improves our mitochondria if we get rest. A little bit of cold is good for us. A little bit of heat is good for us. And so we can build this capacity now for health, well-being, and ability to perform, ultimately setting the stage for us to be able to thrive moving forwards. And that's my great dream and hope for everybody from now on. I want us to get back to joy, back to thriving, back to flourishing, right? Where we can have a great life, where we can play again and just smile with the people that we love, like we're doing right now. So yeah, that's the dream. That's how we get to a healthy life where we thrive, I think.
Thank you. That was an awesome answer.
Yeah. Yeah, love that. And I think that I hope that people, as they're listening to this, they're seeing that, what you're talking about is complicated, but you're explaining it in a really easy, accessible way. And it's like that throughout the book. So, people should definitely jump in and find out some more. I'm going to throw over to Grahame now. Grahame, what was your question? And tell us a bit about why you chose it.
So actually my question is terrible. So I'm going to go with another one because I looked at it and thought, what were you thinking, Grahame? But before I get to my question, if I can, for those of you who are listening to this podcast whilst you're in the queue to buy Greg's book, fantastic. For the rest of you who are listening to this podcast, you're not yet in the queue or online, what are you doing? Stop embarrassing yourself. Buy the book. It's amazing.
Greg, thank you, Grahame.
We love you. And it is a phenomenal read. You have Danette has this. It's like a skill, a mastery around being able to explain complex financial things in everyday English, so people get it. You do the same thing with science and physiology. It's amazing. And I think the question that I wanted to ask was less specific and less rambling than that one. And acknowledging that you're not a psychologist, I'm just curious about, and given some of the work you're doing with Dr. Robin, I was really curious about your sort of thoughts on the links between our physiology and our psychology, and how improving one, in this case, physiology, the impact it can have on our psychology. Just your experience around that.
Yeah, and that's a really fascinating subject. It's, when I was in my early 20s and I was finishing my kinesiology degree, I was trying to figure out like what's next, and I ended up going back to do my master's. And the original master's proposal that I did was on exploring the mind-body connection. And back in the early 90s, everyone was like, you can't do that, just study breathing. And I was like, fine, I'll go do some breathing stuff, which is now hyper relevant. They both are, but I wish I had done more of the mind-body stuff. But what I've come to understand through the master's, the PhD, the brain research that we've done, the physiological research that we've done, is that thinking about mind and body, physiology and psychology as separate really doesn't make sense. Yeah. Because the brain is an anatomical structure, our thoughts are electricity, our emotions are chemicals, they all work together. And so mind, body, emotion are all one and the same. And if we take it a step further and consider spirit, whatever that means for you, mind, body, emotion, spirit are all one and the same and wrapped up. We know that when our physiology, our body is not well, it's extraordinarily difficult to be well mentally. Similarly, when we are mentally struggling, depression, anxiety, or more severe mental health challenges, our physiology is compromised. And of course, emotions play a huge role in all of that, as does our spirit. And so just like a book that I wrote many years ago called The Ripple Effect talked about sleep, eat, move, think, and how those different factors come together to enable us to be healthy. I actually think that this holistic approach to health and well-being, mind, body, emotion, spirit, which we've all learned about together over the last decade from some of the most incredible people on the planet, that's the game, right? We can be physically healthy, but if you're not mentally healthy, then we need to work on that to get everything better. And they all work together. And to me, mind and body are not separate. They're one and the same. And so act, think, feel, and feel, think, act work positively or negatively. And so the more we can get onto this upward spiral of wellness, the better we'll be in all of those different areas of our life.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. And I think just a really quick follow-up. So I had a coaching client last year for about 12 months, halfway through 21 and half of last year, who got into this sort of pattern of thinking that they're in a really flat state, like a lot of us. COVID made a mess of so many things. And they were in Melbourne, which for people who might be listening and watching the podcast, Melbourne, Australia copped the worst, like the absolute brunt of lockdowns, far more than anyone else in Australia. But he was in this sort of mind state where he was waiting to feel more motivated so he could get out of bed and get out of the house and go and exercise. And I found it interesting that it's sometimes just doing the little thing will actually change the way you think and feel, rather than waiting to feel motivated. It's like, we'll just do something little anyway.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Like what chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
Does action precede motivation, or does motivation precede action? And you sent a note to me earlier about Jim Quick's principle that, that action is what leads to the motivation, which I've heard several times before from a number of different people. I really believe that, which is why starting so small is so important. If you want to get into, let's say you're on the couch, you've been on the couch for a few years, like, I'm going to run a marathon. Fair enough. Great idea. But maybe let's just do a 5K, and let's do the 5K in 6 months.
Yep. And
this week, let's not go running. Let's just go for a walk. And let's not go for an hour. Let's go for like 20 minutes. Right. And then actually, no, you know what? 5 minutes. And then maybe on Thursday, we'll do another one. And it's that action that leads to the motivation, because in 6 months from now, if you've been walking consistently, it's really easy to start jogging.
Yes. Yep.
And then once you've been jogging 6 weeks, it's super easy to do a running interval. But if you do a running interval in week 1, you're done. You're taking the shoes off. You're like, I give up, sign me up for Netflix. I'm out. And so starting really, really small, so small, and whether it's meditation, exercise, healthy eating, relationships, whatever it is, the minimum effective dose, who cares if it's effective? The minimum dose possible of whatever it is that you want to start doing is the way to go. I've got a really cool story for you on this, just about the power of starting with Act, Think, Feel. I was really fortunate. I got to commentate the 2012 Olympics in London. But about 6 weeks before the Olympics, one of the Canadian team divers was in Spain training, crashed, hit his head on the board, split his head open, peeled his scalp back, stitches, concussion, like really brutal, like bloodied. It was an absolutely horrific accident. 12 weeks later at the Olympics, he had to do the exact same dive. And so, and I was in the pool watching, because I love going to the pool. I'm a swimmer. And I was watching him beforehand. And sorry about my dog losing it at the postman, but he was just standing. His eyes were closed, head back, chest open, arms were open. And you could see him just breathing. And then his shoulders dropped, and you saw a little smile on his face. And then he got up onto the board and executed a perfect dive. So what did he do? He was having thoughts about the past, but he controlled his physiology first, relaxed his body, centered his mind on today, not 6 weeks ago. That settled his emotions, enabling him to be able to perform.
Yep.
What do the vast majority of humans do? We experience emotions, therefore we have certain thoughts, and we react, and we lash out, or we say something that we regret. What do world-class performers do? They do the opposite. They control their physiology, breath work, relaxation, exercise, tension scan, whatever it is. That gives you a chance to have good psychology, which controls your emotions so that you can respond to the challenge instead of react to the challenge, which I think sets you up for success. It's all wrapped up in that, but I love your question, and it's the game changer when we execute it well.
Yeah. Thanks, Greg. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome again, and it's so interesting. Like as you listen to these different sort of techniques that you're talking about, and I guess your experience in so many different areas is such a I guess holistic, interesting way to look at things. I love it. I always love these chats anyway with you, Dr. Greg. So this is good. I'm going to throw to John now. John, what was your question and why'd you pick it?
Okay, well, thanks, Dr. Greg, for the book. I mean, it is an easy read, which blew my mind. I mean, I'm thinking this is going to be dense and horrible, but it actually was. And when you explain the mitochondria on video, can you use sock puppets? Because that was just,
you know what, I need to do that.
Another, and yeah, I think it'd be hilarious.
Grogu to explain it next time.
So the questions the question I put in was around the stress levels, and you talk about stress levels lead to ill health because they affect the mitochondria, which leads to further damage and ill health. But then later on, you talk about stress can give you a positive push too. And how do you find that balance? And just another thing I'll throw at you is, should we stop using words like stress because it's a catch-all? And should we start trying to break it down and name whatever that is that sits behind it if we can? So
I love it.
Those two things.
Amazing. And I love doing questions with you guys because you asked me like 6 questions in one. I'm like, what was the third part of section 2 of question 8? Anyway, I'll do my best. If I don't answer all the questions, remind me and I'll get to it. We'll go from back to front. So around naming things, there's outstanding research. I'm not a psychologist, I'm a physiologist, but I hang out with brilliant psychologists who teach me cool things. So I'm sharing something I have learned. And that is that naming the challenge helps us tremendously improve our mental health. So whether that's naming things like, I am feeling depressed right now, or I'm experiencing anxiety, or I'm feeling stressed, by naming it, it helps us to manage that situation. When it comes to stress, you're right. Stress is this catch-all term, but it's incredibly complex. And there's many different facets to it. Just like brain cancer is different from breast cancer, which is different from colon cancer. Like they're all very different diseases, but they're lumped together. But when we break it apart and deconstruct it a little bit, we get a lot more insight. The easiest way to deconstruct stress, just straight off the top, would be to think of it in terms of positive and negative. The technical terms for positive stress are eustress, EU stress. That's challenge, right? Things that actually motivate us, things that are stimulating, things that bring us up. If you have no stress, you die. Too much stress, you die. Good amount of intermediate amount of stress is actually challenging for us. It's manageable. It forces us to, it challenges us to grow. It's how we learn. Distress is stress that is overwhelming. And that's when there's just too much coming at you. It's too hard to cope with right now. And that's very difficult. And so stress has, sort of like two sides of the same coin. And by the way, two different people can perceive the exact same event as either distress or eustress. So it depends on the individual as well. Largely regulated through a structure in the brain called the amygdala, which makes that decision. But either way, naming it and understanding it is good. Now, in terms of in the book, we talk a lot about stress and specifically the idea of hormesis, which is that a little bit of stress is good, a lot is not. How does that work? Well, a little bit of stress can be stimulating for positive adaptation. For example, you go into the gym, you lift weights, you stress your muscles, you break the muscles down, the inflammatory pathway gets activated, you rebuild those muscles to be slightly stronger. Same thing occurs in the brain. A little bit of stress breaks down some of the neurotransmitters in your neurons. You grow new and stronger and more neurotransmitters as well as stronger pathways. You build resilience, build strength, you build resilience. Cardio is the same thing. Go for a run, stress your heart gets bigger, stronger, more powerful, you get fitter. So a little bit of stress is great if you have rest, because it is in that rest period that the body repairs, recovers, and regenerates. If you don't have that rest after the stress, then it's just chronic. You never get a chance to recover. Imagine going and lifting weights for 16 hours straight. You'd injure yourself. Similarly, what we have seen recently is 3 years of constant change, unrelenting stress, horrific information through the news cycle. And as a result, people are now burned out, exhausted, overwhelmed. So what I recommend when it comes to stress is considering the idea of stress plus rest equals growth. And that's from Steve Magnus and Brad Stulberg's book, Peak Performance. I framed it so beautifully. But when we have those periods of rest, in between moments where we are stressed, guess what? We grow, we get fitter, we get stronger, we get more resilient. If it's just relentless and it never stops, that's when we're in trouble. That's where we get sick. That's where we get cancer, because the immune system fights off cancer. If we're constantly stressed, your immune system gets depressed and we become subject to more greater risk of cancer. And stress is related to 75% of the chronic diseases that we experience as humans. So stress plus rest equals growth. We all have plenty of stress in our lives. What we can add, what we need to give ourselves permission to add, is that rest period. Great sleep, good meal with family, meditation, going for a walk on the weekend, in the park, hugging your kids, right? Whatever that happens to be for you, journaling, art, listening to music, giving ourselves permission to get those rest intervals in is what makes all the difference in the world. I've coached like dozens and dozens of Olympic athletes. And yeah, training's super important. But the reality is they only train 5 hours a day, maybe 6. Synchro swimming might be 8, the most. You still have the other time left, all of which is dedicated to nutrition, massage, stretching, relaxing, reading, sleeping. That's what determines whether or not you get on the podium. That rest interval is even more important than the training itself. And we can all adopt that, right? We can all adopt that idea and give ourselves permission to take that time that we need to recover and to regenerate. That was a very long answer to your question, but hopefully that helps.
Yeah, no, very good. Good answer. what I'm taking away from that is you talk about the stress plus rest equals growth, but rest isn't just sleep or sitting on the couch watching Netflix. It's doing something enjoyable, doing something regenerative for you. So whether it's a walk, dinner with family, reading a book, that rest is you time.
Yeah. And some of us are introverts and we want to be alone with a book. And some of us are extroverts and need to be surrounded by people. And having that self-awareness too, right? Like Judith, my wife, recharges if there are lots of people around and she's throwing dinner party after dinner party after dinner party after dinner party. She's awesome. I love people. I like thrive on my dear friends, but I really need cave time as well. Mm. And when I'm in the cave, it's like, close the door. Please, dear God, don't just give me, I just need half an hour by myself, please. Right. And then Adam, my son, comes in and starts hitting me with a lightsaber. And, you know, we just do a little bit more meditation in the moment, practice being a Jedi. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes into all of that.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's cool.
Yeah, I think that actually comes perfectly to Kanika's question here, which I'll ask, which is, Kanika said, people talk about needing to protect their energy, which can be really tricky when balancing other things in life. You know, with people working from home, that line can be blurred as to sometimes when to stop working. What are some good boundaries and tips to help people protect their energy?
Great question. That's like, okay, Greg, nice book. Thanks so much. But my life is crazy. How do I actually do this? Right. And so I know a lot of people are probably thinking that right now. So we have this idea when we were doing coaching around general adaptation energy. We all have a certain amount of energy that we have, and you can get more energy through sleep, you get more energy through exercise and building mitochondria and more capability to create energy, more energy through nutrition. So sleep, eat, move, all of those things elevate us. Resting our brains through meditation also helps to give you more energy. There's all those positive inputs that increase your energy levels. But then we have a lot of things that we spend our energy on: relationships, work, travel, tasks, chores, right? Like there's lots of things that drain our energy out. The game for all of us is to increase the amount of energy that we put into the tank and make sure that the energy that we're spending is going where we want it to go. And that's really hard. There's a lot of competing demands. Some of them are in our control. Some of them are not. Your boss may ask you to do something. You have to do it if you want to keep your job, which is usually a good thing. Not always. So, you know, that's another discussion for another day. That's not my area of expertise, but figuring out that energy balance is really, really important for us. We want to make sure that we're filling our cup. We want to make sure that we are defending ourselves from things that poke holes in the cup, and allocate that energy towards the things that are important to us in our lives. And a simple idea that I've pulled out of the Titan Summit that I was fortunate enough to go to and where I met Grahame and Danette is really revolves around the idea of people, places, and pursuits, right? So when we're thinking about like, where do we spend our energy? Well, it's on the people that we love. That's why we're here on this podcast today. Where do we allocate our energy in terms of what we do during the course of the day? That's on our pursuits, our passions, right? Like what we love to do. So we're spending our energy with the people that we love, on our passions, on our purpose, on our mission. And then ideally also thinking about like what places elevate us. Is it the chair that you have on your deck that overlooks the park? Is it the park? Is it the beach? Is it the river? It could be your office if you're so fortunate. It could be your car. Could be the studio. It could be anywhere. So when we have an understanding of the people, places, and pursuits that elevate us, and we know that that's where we want to direct our energy, then we can start to make decisions around our discretionary energy expenditures. So that general adaptation energy is key. We want to fill up our energy buckets as much as we can, defend that bucket from people and things and tasks poking holes in it and sucking our energy away, and then allocate that energy towards the things that we love, people, places, and pursuits. This is not easy. It takes a lot of journaling, takes a lot of planning, takes a lot of deconstruction, takes a lot of self-awareness. It'll take you months to years to figure all of this out. You may never figure all of it out, but simply moving in that direction is going to change your life. It has for me, it has for Grahame, Danette, and lots of our friends that we've made over the years together. And it's hard, but that's why we have incredible people, and we surround ourselves with incredible people that are going on the same journey as us, because then we all help each other, right? And then just gets a little bit easier, so we can all do it maybe a little bit more and have a little bit more fun and play a little bit more, which is what this is all about.
Yeah, awesome. That's a great way to look at it. And I love the 3 Ps. Makes it easy for us that don't have great memories to remember it. So that's perfect. Awesome. Well, I might jump into Allegra's question, which I thought was kind of an interesting way to kind of look at it. But it was, while doing the research for the book, what were some things that really surprised you? And then the second part is, what was one lesson from writing this book that is something that has entered your daily practice / outlook on life? Another 5 questions in one for you there.
Yeah, I'm glad you wrote them down for me. One of the things that really surprised me was the consistency around stressors and whether or not they're good or bad. So let's take cold water immersion, for example, sitting in an ice bath, super popular right now. A little bit of cold is really good for you because it calms your nervous system down and enables you to shift from sympathetic fight or flight to parasympathetic rest or recover. A little bit of cold is good. A lot of cold will kill you. Hypothermia, you die, right? So like a little bit is awesome. Let's carry on. Heat, saunas, hot baths, so good for you. They create heat shock proteins that circulate around your body and improve your cardiovascular system. Research is quite clear. 3 saunas a week, 20 minutes each, extends your lifespan significantly. If you don't have a sauna, that's cool. Take a hot bath. It's all good. But too much heat, hyperthermia, you die, right? So a little bit is good. A lot is not. Cold, same thing. A little bit of good is good. A lot is not. Salt would be another example. No salt, you die. Too much salt, you die. A little bit of salt, guess what? You're actually improving your nervous system and membranes inside your body. That to me was amazing, in that it was just over and over and over again. When you look at all of these different factors that are quote unquote biohacks these days, it follows the same pattern, which means that moderation is the key. Consistency is the key. Extremes does not work. Hard for me, being the extreme physiologist who likes to climb mountains and ride his bike across deserts. I was devastated. I was like, no, moderation wins. Like, what? That's not right. You have to go for miles. No, in fact, you need to just go for a walk. Exercise follows the same pattern. No exercise, you die. Too much exercise, you die. Moderate amounts of exercise consistently, your health improves. Over and over and over. Sleep, same thing. No sleep, you die. Too much sleep, you die. Moderate amount of sleep, guess what? You live longer. And so it just enabled me to really see that cutting through so much of the nonsense that is out there on the internet right now really revolves just around moderation, consistency, logic. And that's how I think we can all move forwards together. And it sort of deconstructs the extremes, which is good because you can go to the extremes for a while. I enjoy it. I like it. I will do so again. But you always want to come back to that zone of comfort, safety, moderation, and consistency and simplicity, frankly. And that's probably the thing that surprised me the most, was that it is just so incredibly simple. That isn't sexy. It's not going to get me a lot of followers on social media. It's not going to polarize anyone. But it's the universal human truth.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for the conversation today. I feel I've picked up so much even from this conversation as well as the book. But before we wrap up, let's grab some final thoughts from everyone. So I might start with you, John. What were your final thoughts on the conversation today and the book?
Oh, lots. A hell of a lot, Dr. Greg. Thank you for all of that. Put your energy where you want it to go, and defend that bucket of energy with everything you've got is probably the big takeaway. I mean, I've always worked on all things in moderation, including moderation. And I guess I need to rethink that last bit. So yeah, look, it's brilliant. Love talking to you. It's fantastic. Thank you very much. But yeah, get the sock puppets going.
All right.
Here we go. This is
people. Grogu's going to hang out with me for a little while. Hey, John.
And for people that aren't watching this podcast, you can jump on Spotify. The video will be up so you can enjoy that visual gag, which I'd highly recommend. Thanks for that, John. I'll throw to Danette. Danette, any final thoughts on the book, the conversation today? Yeah.
Sorry, we're on mute. Grahame was doing the muting thing. I really love the bit, the stress plus rest equals the growth. And I really loved how you talked about rest, because historically I have thought about it, naps, sleep, etc. But the way you explained it makes so much sense. So that was, super awesome. And just another plug for your book. It is a really practical, awesome book. So I encourage everyone to read it. It's easy to read and full of great ideas. So thank you. Thank you.
Love it. Yeah. Thanks, Danette. And thanks for the questions today. Great stuff. Grahame, I'll throw to you. Any final thoughts on the conversation today or the book or, anything that we've talked about today?
Have you got a couple of hours to spare, Greg?
Yeah, no worries. Let's do it. I'm done. This is the last one of the day. I'm good to keep going.
6 podcasts and you're still with us. It's phenomenal. So thank you. It's been a blessing to have met you and to continue to know you, and so grateful for what you're doing. I do have a final question, which was, when are you coming to Oz again?
Yeah, as soon as I possibly can. Actually doing some great work with the company down in Australia right now and New Zealand as well. So it's definitely on the radar and something we have to do within the next year. So we will be down with the whole family very soon.
Oh, fantastic.
Awesome.
We'll pick you up at the airport.
Perfect.
One thing that sort of stood out for me was the idea of just small steps, because I think one of the challenges, because there's just so much in the book, and there's so much that's possible for people who read the book. For those of you who are in the queue right now waiting to buy the book, there's just so much in there. But the idea that, and if I can paraphrase Dr. Robin, we can do hard things. We can do hard things. So it's remembering that, you said this stuff is hard. It's not easy. If it was easy, you wouldn't have written the book, and we wouldn't be having this conversation, because the world would be a completely different animal. So just reminding people that it is just one little step. Go for a walk for 5 minutes. That's it. And then celebrate. Give yourself a pat in the back. And if you want to, binge watch Netflix after that, go for a walk for 6 minutes, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. But look, thank you, Greg. Thank you. We love you dearly. Very, very grateful for your time and your wisdom, and the fact that you care so much to do the work that you do. So amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I love all of you too, and honored and grateful to have all of you in my life, and that this is my Australian family, and cannot wait to hang out with you guys in person soon.
Looking forward.
Yeah. Absolutely. And for people that are listening to this podcast and want to find out more about Dr. Greg, obviously you can go to drgregwells.com. The link will be in the description. You also have the Dr. Greg Wells podcast. And of course, we've got the book. Once again, I'm going to say Powerhouse, Protect Your Energy, Optimize Your Health, and Supercharge Your Performance. Go get it. The link is in the description. But before we go, Dr. Greg, any final thoughts on the book, the conversation today, or just any final thoughts to leave us with?
Just deeply grateful for the opportunity to speak to all of you. Thank you for listening. Thanks for sticking around this long into the show. Appreciate all of your support, and super happy and thrilled to have all of you in my life. So it's been great.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure we'll have you on again. Thanks again for being our first repeat guest. We couldn't have thought of someone better to have on. And to everybody that's listening at home, have a magical week.